This episode is made possible by our sponsor, Landmark College, the college for students who learn differently, offering comprehensive supports for students with ADHD and other learning differences, both on campus and online. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Distraction. I'm your guest host, Alisyn Camerota. So today's episode is very special because my special expert guests are my own twin 16-year-old daughters. We also have Dr. Lea Lis, a double board certified adult and child psychiatrist and author of the book No Shame, Real Talk with Your Kids about sex, self-confidence, and healthy relationships. And I start from the position of being pretty baffled and frightened, frankly, by how teenagers are conducting relationships via Snapchat. You know, I admit I don't get it. I don't get how this generation is approaching sex and hookups and relationships and intimacy. So tune in for some juicy conversations on those topics. This is Dale, short for Alessandra. This is Chessa, short for Francesca.
Hi.
That's Dr. Lis.
Hello, Dr. Lis.
Hi, everybody.
So I'm doing this podcast on parenting of teenagers. And I have always been fascinated by this. My teenage years were are very vivid still for me. And they were kind of a very intense, almost fluorescent time. And so I was always looking forward to having teenagers. I wasn't afraid of it. But now it's getting in my way a little bit, as we've realized last night. My own impressions of teenagehood and memories are getting in the way a little bit. But first, let me just say, I love your book. I'm on page of No Shame. I'm on page 134. And I just love how digestible and absorbable all of your pointers for parents are. And I love that you give, for instance, the comebacks that teenagers can use when somebody's pressuring them.
I read that one.
For sex.
Good, yeah.
It's great because I told them, you want to just be armed with these things because it will happen, okay? In every life, there will be some situation where you're pressured for sex.
Yeah, and I think the comebacks are meant to be very practical. And I think you do have to rehearse them because I know when I was a kid, I was always taught to be a nice girl. And that if you were not, you always had to be nice. So you never want to make anyone feel bad. And that really is, really antithesis of when you're trying to tell someone no, that's kind of brought a lot of shame to me and many, many other girls in my practice because they want attention, they want to feel good, they don't want to disappoint. So it's like, giving them the language and the tools to be like, no, but not in like no, just like in a funny way or in a kind of turn it around way where it's not like you're being mean and you're being, it's really great to practice that language for like a bunch of different situations. I don't know, Ali and Tessa, how do you feel about it? Like, do you feel like it would be good to be armed with some language to use when you just don't feel comfortable in a situation?
Definitely. Even at camp, we were at sleepaway camp and, we were talking with some girls about, sex and what they've done. And they talked about feeling pressured and feeling like they can't be honest with their partner or with like whoever they're in like a relationship with because they don't want to make them feel bad. And I was kind of telling them, I feel that isn't the best way to go about it because we should be honest and so we can get the most out of an experience, like we shouldn't just be trying to not hurt their feelings. So I think this page is really nice.
Thank you. I think it's also really great to set expectations before a situation arises. So, I think you women should, be able to say right before a date, like this is going to be kissing only, like set that expectation up front, because actually in a lot of ways it's relieving for the other person. because they don't feel the pressure of being like, how far does this person want to go tonight? Like, it just takes a whole pressure off. If you're just like, this is going to be a waist up date. This is going to be kissing only from the start, because then the expectations are managed and you don't have to stress out the whole night. Like, are they going to try something? Are they going to make me uncomfortable? Like, what are we going to do? Like, and if they're thinking they're going to get sex, they already know they're not. So if they don't want to go out with you, then fine. You know, you kind of already know what this is about.
That's such a great one, because I used to do that even in my 30s. I'd be like, okay, we're just making out tonight. The guy would be like, what? Like, what are you like that? Well, I'm not kidding. This is a makeout night. Like, I actually would do that, and it was a joke. I mean, I wasn't joking, but it ended up, we would crack up, because saying that at the top, it does, and I was serious, but he laughed, because I like setting the expectation. You know, I do think it takes the pressure off for everybody.
And it can actually have a lot more fun, I feel like.
Yeah, but okay, so I want to get to the point of what we're going through right now. And that is that because I'm trapped in the 80s in my mindset of my teenagehood, you know, my friends and I think everybody in high school, I mean, I don't think it was just us. I think that this was the norm. We paired up. We were serial monogamists. We would have a boyfriend for a year or 2 years in high school, and then it would invariably implode in some sort of highly dramatic, cataclysmic way, often at a party, and we would break up very dramatically, and then like a week later, we'd have a new boyfriend and go out with them for like a year or two. That's how it worked. And so we were paired up and we were coupled up, and these guys are just having a totally different experience. And so I guess I want to just start with you as the expert of telling me, like, has there been some sort of major sea change generationally where teenagers are not pairing up long-term right now?
Yes. So it's a couple interesting facts, which is that the average age of sexual initiation, I don't like to say losing virginity, because you're not losing anything, right? You're gaining something really wonderful. But the average age of sexual initiation has actually gone up from 16 and a half to 17. Our days it was 16 and a half. So teenagers actually are waiting longer, which shows some good judgment, but not all for the right reasons. The reasons why a lot of teenagers are waiting longer is because they're stressed out and they don't have time to form intimate relationships or bonds with somebody else. So they don't feel ready to have sex unless they feel connection. And also because the rise of the hookup culture has taught many teenagers that they're like needy and annoying if they want to be in a relationship. Like, don't be that girl, like, needs to have a boyfriend. It's like all these messages, hookup culture, don't get attached. You're just a teenager. It's never going to lead to a long-term relationship. So why bother? I don't know if that's your experience. Is that your experience?
Yeah. So tell me about that. Ollie, do you feel that way, that there's a hookup culture because you're taught not to get attached?
Yeah, I guess that there is more of a, like an idea that like you just kind of want to hook up with like a lot of people over than just finding that one person. Also because at parties, it's not like you're going to a party to look for a boyfriend, you're going to a party to hook up with a bunch of people and just like have a like good time. Like nobody really thinks, I think there's less of a emphasis on relationships and more just on like it being in the moment and just hooking up with anyone that wants to or something.
And why is it?
I mean, I don't really know. I don't know. I definitely think the stress, I've noticed that even at our school and the public school, there's just, everyone has a lot more work. I feel like, all older parents and grandparents, like, you guys are always going someplace. You guys never have time anymore. And it's like, that's just, I think that in this day and age right now, there's just, kids are doing a lot more than what teenagers did in the 80s. So it is true. A lot of people are saying, oh, I don't have time for a relationship right now.
That's what I hear a lot. I don't have time.
Yeah, you still feel that stress. Like, but I am a teenager. I need to be experiencing things, but I don't have time to like go on a date. So it's like
they're much more scheduled. Let's be honest. I mean, I had time to like hang out in a friend's bedroom after school for hours, like listening to music. That's what we did.
Yeah, exactly. And so they could foster these intimate relationships that revolve around, pheromones and smell and, the hanging out and this, all that nonverbal exchange that created this intimacy that now teenagers are being deprived of, especially during the pandemic, at a real loss. Because I think a lot of teens your age you're not practicing intimacy in your lives the same way that we did, at a loss for relationships. I wonder how that's going to affect your future relationships, because you're really delaying, what I would consider pretty normal sexual development. So some of it's good, not to have maybe sex or worry about pregnancy when you're 16, but some of it's not great, because later on you're going to be ill prepared for the relationships, because you're not in your parents' house anymore when you have your first couple of intimate relationships, and they're not there to pick you up off the floor when you have that dramatic outburst and dry your tears. So I do think there's a real loss in our culture because of this, the way that we deal with sex now. And also there's a lot of alcohol and sex involved in sex now that we didn't see in our day, meaning like people have sex when they're drinking because they're nervous or whatever. And so it leads to a lot of sexual assault, but also it's just like, it doesn't feel as good because you disconnect from the hormones and the experience of oxytocin and all those beautiful things. So they're also having a lot less pleasurable sex.
I really worry about that. I worry about all of that. I worry about binge drinking. These guys are very responsible. They're super conscientious. They're, healthy kids. But I just worry about college, because I hear about, the hookup culture, the binge drinking, all that stuff. And so, Dr. Lis, in your practice, like, what are we supposed to do about that? Since I think it's the downfall of civilization, but I'm trying not to be too dramatic.
Well, I just really say, like, don't have sex when you're drinking. There's no reason to. Kiss, that's it. If you like the person, set up to see them the next day when you're sober, because you rarely as a woman have an orgasm if you're really drunk. It just doesn't happen because you can't feel your body, right? So it's just not worth it. And I think that's something you girls should take in and just be like, it's just not worth it.
That's great. I think that's great advice. Just have sex sober. You can make out drunk, but we used to in the 80s call it like sloppy sex. Like if somebody was too drunk, it would just be sloppy sex. And that was just a term. But that sounded very unpleasant to me. Like, why would you ever want to have sloppy sex?
Right. I agree.
And so, okay, I'll let you in on one of our. Okay, should I start with last night?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so last night we had a bad experience because I am, as Chessa told me at the end of the night when she was mad at me, I am forcing the teenage experience on them. So I'm like, okay, what party can I drive you guys to? Are there going to be guys downtown? Should we go down there right now? Like, because they don't drive yet. And I want them to go make out with boys. And like, I don't know what I've become, but I'm trying to like get some practice under their belt, so to speak. And so Chessa was finally like, time out. I ended up having a miserable night.
It's that, I feel that as we're constantly trying to have this teenage experience to the point where it's like, we're teenagers, we're living life. Like, this is also an experience. I feel that a lot of parents from the 80s, with a lot of our friends' parents, they had certain experiences that just aren't necessarily feasible today, because a lot of the ways that a lot of kids our age are having relationships is that they're snapping people on Snapchat, and they're like, okay, meet me here. Like, it's not, you're not like fostering intimate connection. It's just meet me here, we'll like make out or something. So I don't think mom understands that if we're going to hang out at these things, you're just like getting their Snapchats and then leaving. Like, it's just not the same. So it can be a little bit frustrating when it feels like having a teenage experience. It's not the same as when you were a kid. Yes, I know people who are dating and in relationships, but that's, in my opinion, that's the minority. I don't know if Allah thinks that.
So nobody's standing outside your door with a boombox.
And so I'm totally out of my depth. And I don't like that there's just Snapchatting, and like, sometimes you don't even know the person very well. And so I don't know. But this is the world they're living in. And so should I be nervous about that? What should we do about the social media connection and lack of intimacy?
I think that as Chessa pointed out, like, it is what it is. They're living in this time where social media and everything is done virtually, and we have to accept and embrace it And I think that they're fine just doing what they're doing because they've got good values. As you said, they've got good heads, on their shoulders. They've shown to be responsible. So you have to follow their lead and let them have their experience the way they want. The only thing that I hope is that they come to you when they feel ready to push, the boundaries of an intimate relationship and say, Mom, I think I'm ready to have sex. And then you say, okay, great. Like, let me give you a safe space in our home to do that. Because I don't want you to have sex outside of my home because you might not be safe there, and really embrace that experience, and then give them both a big hug after and say, this is amazing, but just give them that safe space, but like they're going to do it on their terms.
Do you feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah.
You feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah, no, totally.
What's your question?
Ooh, my question is a little bit more PG-13 maybe, but I always hear, I think I never really realized this, but now I'm hearing from other people that it's really hard for girls to have orgasms and really hard for like girls to have pleasure in sexual experiences. And that really bums me out. And I'm not like, well-versed on the topic, so I don't really know what to make of it. But so how do you think we should combat this?
Yes, and that is because of the lack of, education about sex and lack of practice, but mostly it's a lot to do with alcohol use, as I described earlier. But I think that young girls are not really encouraged to explore their body, and really the only way to really learn how to have an orgasm is through masturbation. There is no other way, despite what anyone will tell you, and so. That has got to be something that is allowed and encouraged, and it's your body. You should get to know it in every which way possible. And then you need to teach your person how to do that to you, because you need to know yourself, right? And that's the foundation of like a great sex life is self-pleasure. So, I think that's something that girls are really not taught to do or allowed to do or really like encouraged to do, and people get weirded out by it. I don't really understand why, but that's really the foundation of pleasure is self-pleasure.
I did not know about this. I did not know that women were not having orgasms until recently. A few years ago, I go on girls' trips with all my best friends, and they were talking about this, about how like in their teens and 20s and 30s that they weren't having orgasms. And I was like, I couldn't even compute what they were saying. I was like, what? Why? What are you talking about? Like it was upsetting to me. I was like, why would you ever have sex and not for your own pleasure? And my best friend said, well, Alisyn, no offense, but not everybody's as selfish as you. And I was like, no offense taken, that's a badge of honor. Like, what are you doing? If you're having sex, why would you be doing it if not for your own pleasure?
No, I totally agree. That's what I tell my friends.
10 to 15% of all women never have an orgasm in their life, but certainly in their 20s, it's like it goes up every year, obviously, but like, 50% is teenagers, and then it gets better over time. But like, it's amazing to me how women, again, are taught to be nice. They're taught to be, they take in all these cultural messages. You have to be nice. You have to please your person. You have to take care of your family. So they see it as an obligation, not as prioritizing their own pleasure. And, I think there's like masculine and feminine energy, and, all men and women can have a combination of both. So the feminine energy is to receive and the masculine energy is to give. And it's this whole idea of like, I'm just going to receive this because I don't prioritize my own pleasure because I'm just trying to be a nice girl. It's a really subtle cultural message, but Brene Brown talks about it. Lots of people talk about the shame of not being a nice girl, or what if, your partner can't please you? It must mean there's something wrong with them and all this stuff, instead of figuring it out like for yourself and how you can then teach somebody else how to do it. So it's strange, but I would definitely think the foundation, as I said, is self-pleasure. You got to figure that out for yourself. If that requires getting a few toys to do so, please do. I don't know if that embarrasses you, but it's just like this whole idea of figure it out for yourself, and then you can show someone else how to do it.
What do you think about that?
I don't know how like in depth they're going, but I think that the reason orgasms are so hard when like women are having sex with men is because men they don't really know like women's bodies at all. And
I was reading, like, there's some statistic that when women have sex with other women, it's like much more common. Like they always have an orgasm. Like it's so much like easier to have it when you're with someone who knows like your own body and like how that works. But the guys just don't really understand it. I mean, I guess it's not their fault. They just don't understand the female like anatomy. And I think that's also one of the reasons why it's so difficult.
I love that.
I do too, and I think that that's why what you're saying, Dr. Lis, is so important, is that you do have to educate them.
Yeah.
But it's not like, it doesn't have to be a chore. Like, I don't like sex as an obligation, like at any age. I don't think that's, like sex as an obligation, is there anything less sexy than that, you know? And so you have to be into it, obviously.
Yeah.
And then, I don't mean it has to be a class and a tutorial, but it's just like, you just have to tell them, this is what I like, you know, I like that, I don't like that. Don't do that again. Don't touch that. I like this.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think would that make you nervous? Like, do you feel any shame of that or uncomfortable, like when you imagine doing that?
I think that if it's with someone I don't know that well, then yes. But if it's someone that I feel comfortable with, then that sounds completely fine. So I think it's this whole idea of this hookup culture that I think it's hard too, because we're in this right now as teenagers. So it's hard to pave our own path when it feels like no one is coming there with us. So I feel like, for me personally, I feel that I'm nervous that I won't get any experience if I'm not, buying into the hookup culture, because it doesn't seem like I'm looking around at my peers and it feels like no one else is, that I'm in this small minority here, like wanting to actually really know the person before you do that. So, and I'm actually kind of looking for guidance. What do I do when it feels like we're kind of alone?
It's true, because I hear this from teenage girls all the time, that they feel that they're never going to lose their virginity unless they engage, or sexual initiation, unless they engage with this hookup culture thing, and just find someone, because nobody was going to want to invest the time in having a relationship. I can say that both of you are absolutely gorgeous and wonderful already. I can tell, and have a great head on your shoulders. Like, you will find someone who thinks like the way that you do. It's just, you're going to have to be patient, and it's probably worth the wait, because you can be my 93-year-old mentor in child psychiatry. I did a talk, a Zoom with her the other day. She said, you can be a piece of ass for anyone. And I died laughing because she's 93. I was like, yes, you can be a piece of ass for anyone, but if you want to have an amazing experience, and I'm not trying to put all the pressure on your first sexual experience, because that's always awkward. But if you want to look back on the experience and be like, that was clearly a beautiful thing, even though it was awkward and painful, it was beautiful. You don't want to look back and be like, wow, that I really feel kind of almost ashamed about it, because the next day this person didn't call me and that really hurt, and that's really, you don't want to be just a piece of ass for anyone. Just be patient, because that right person is going to look at you and is going to feel like, wow, I really want to invest time in this person. I'm really excited. And not all, I'm going to say guys, but it could be a woman, whoever you pick for the sexual initiation, is someone is going to look at you and be like, I really want to invest the time in this person. I really want to get to know them, because, that's what it takes to have sex with them. I'm going to do it. Don't rush that experience, because you can be a piece of ass for anyone. Thank you, Dr. Kestenbaum.
I totally agree. I mean, it does require more patience. And I think that that's hard. I think that's hard to like buck the trend and to, blaze your own trail as a teenager. I mean, by definition, as a teenager, you're not interested in doing that. But I think it would pay off. Are you comfortable doing that? Like being patient and waiting for the right experience, or would you rather just get it over with?
I mean, I definitely want to be patient, but at the same time, it's like I don't want to be going into college, like not having my first kiss yet. Like sometimes like you do have to like put yourself out there, but also like, because what Chess was saying before, like, because this is like just how it works, at least where we live. I don't know about where other people live, if it's different. This might just be our only way to actually like experience something. Like, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, sometimes you just have to play by the rules of your time and not be emotionally invested. But I don't mean for like your first sexual experience. For kissing, and making out, fooling around, like everything. But I take your point. Like I would say be patient and wait for the first sexual experience. But for other things, sometimes you just have to
I totally
kiss the guy. That advice too. They've both been asked out on dates and gone on dates. And I'm like, would it kill you to kiss the guy?
Like, that's the 80s mom talking.
Yeah. I mean, I know that like he might not be your dream man, but like, come on.
Our knight in shining armor, but
just plant to kiss on the guy.
Yeah.
So I'm with you, Ollie. Like at some point, you just have to get the reps, get the experience. But I totally agree with Dr. Lis. For your first sexual experience, I mean, losing your virginity, that just should be special.
Are we being misguided by thinking that our sexual intercourse is something that we need to wait for and like wait for the right person? Or is that a myth? Like, I can't tell if like this is just a mom talking, or if you actually have done like the study and the research that like, is sex that big of a deal? Like, do we really want it to be with someone we really know? Or is that just something people tell us and it actually doesn't really make that much of a difference? Like, I don't really know what the research is. But
yes, that's an amazing question. And what I will say is that casual sex is fine when you're experienced in practice because you have the skills and tools to manage that kind of behavior. But for your first couple of sexual experiences when you're younger, a teenager, I think that casual kind of sex could do a lot of damage because that's the foundation of like everything, that's the foundation of what I would say is your sexual health. And you don't really have the tools when you're young to cope with casual sex because, you might feel betrayed or your trust was broken if you have sex with someone and the next day they don't call you, you don't learn to trust in people. These are the foundational experiences. So I would say, yeah, casual sex is okay. And many adults do it and have a great time, but it shouldn't be the foundation of your sexual journey. That should be, a sweet, trusting, loving experience because it's the floor of which everything else gets stacked on. I've seen in my practice, girls rush into this and they then have a lot of trouble. They say, I can't trust men. I can't trust men. If I heard that once, I heard that time. I'm like, trust men. You're 16 years old. Like, why are you so messed up already? And that's because of this, right? Because they didn't take the time to set up that foundation.
I totally agree. I think that the first time should be healthy and really special and magical and the foundation. And then later you can decide what you feel like doing on any given night and with whom. But I just really totally agree with Dr. Lis that the first time is special and it is memorable and it is something that you'll always carry with you and talk about in the future and trade story, tell your own daughters and all that stuff. So I think that you shouldn't undersell it.
Yeah, I think it's important. Not that put all the pressure. It doesn't have to be someone you're going to marry. That's not what this is about. It's just someone is not going to turn around the next day and reject you and make you feel bad. That's what you're looking for. And someone is going to it's going to be very consensual and it's going to be very earnest about the experience. That's all you really need.
Totally agree. What do you think?
No, I agree too. I think boys should also be given this message because I feel like sometimes there's a lot of emphasis on like a natural experience. We tell this to girls, but I don't know if parents are having the same conversation with their sons. I don't know if you've noticed.
Right on.
All right, well, you'll just have to wait until later this week to hear the rest of that conversation. But my daughter Chessa just touched on a very good point. What about boys? What are we telling our sons on how they should be conducting themselves in relationships? What should we be telling our sons? So you'll hear Dr. Lis's thoughts on that as well as some more from my daughters when we release the rest of that conversation on Thursday. And remember to subscribe to Distraction wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. And please share your feedback with us. Email connect@distractionpodcast.com. I'm Alisyn Camerota. Thanks so much for listening. Distraction is created by Sounds Great Media. Our producer is Sarah Gurton. And special thanks to Emma Marshall, Melissa Blum, and Caitlin Goldsmith.
The episode you just heard was made possible by our sponsor, Landmark College, the college for students who learn differently, offering comprehensive supports for students with ADHD and other learning differences, both on campus and online. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.